I'm Rodd Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. Their health. But with all that said, let me just put this on here and say good afternoon to you folks. How are you guys doing? And welcome. This is Insights and Straight Talk. And of course, I'm Rodd Duff here with producer Barbie. And today I want to be very clear about why we're calling this a deeper drive, I should say. The conversation you may have seen with Chris back in January, on the 29th on 2/26, right as we were starting off this new year. That was not the main event. That was just a preview. This episode was intentionally designed to set the table, to introduce the themes, to surface the tension, to let the audience hear what Chris does and how he thinks. Today's going to be the same thing. It's right now, 1 p.m. Central. This is the conversation that was always meant to follow. This is where we go deeper, because at some point, Insights has to stop being introductory and start being personal. Before we step into that, I want to ground us, as always, in the ecosystem that makes this conversation possible. The Mangum City Library, of course, stands for access, real access. I had several meetings today with some of the city officials here in Mangum about Mangum 2030 and how we're moving this city forward. So it stands for access, real access. And besides those kind of things, I had some kids here earlier wanting to know more about the programs we have for learning, curiosity, and informed citizenship. It represents the idea that strong communities are built by people who are willing to, who are actually willing to listen, to learn, and to think beyond the headlines. Leaf Lab. We're kind of redesigning some of the stuff for them, but Leaf Lab, is set in a position of bringing kids into the world with readiness, not theory for theory's sake, but education that prepares people to solve problems, to adapt quickly and execute in environments that don't pause for comfort. Man, and our partners at Voices at the Table and the Regeneration School Project. You know why? Because they stand for something foundational. Teaching communication, responsibility, and leadership early before life forces those lessons through failure or regret. That matters today, especially because this conversation isn't about tactics. It's about what happens after the preview ends. Well, as it turns out, we're not going to be sitting down with Chris Troka again, the musician, entrepreneur, marketer, creative operator, not to refresh frameworks, but to examine internal shifts. I'll be doing that with you on my own today. That had to occur before execution became real. because execution doesn't begin when the plan is perfect. Never does. It begins when the reasons for not moving forward run out. Chris has spent more than a decade navigating marketing, technology, team building, and creative leadership. But today's focus is on the moments when clarity was missing, momentum felt unstable, and moving forward required owning risk, identity, and responsibility. As both a marketer and a DJ, Chris understands rhythm, as do I. So we're fortunate. Wow, we've got 200 people on already. Chris understands rhythm, timing, reading the room. He understands that communication isn't messaging, it's energy, presence, and adjustment without losing your core. If you're watching live, which it looks like about 200 of you are, this conversation is for you. If you saw the January episode and thought, you know what? Okay, but I want to know what came after that. Or if you've ever said to yourself, I know what I should do, but I haven't moved. Or I'm prepared, but I'm still hesitating. Bring your questions into this chat. This isn't an interview. This is a one, just me and you. It's a deliberate second step. It was always meant to be. Let's take a deeper drive. All right, folks, you got me. I'm here. I'm yours. I'm with y'all, and I can't wait to answer your questions. I'm 300 people on. Glad to see you here. Please subscribe. Please like the episode. Bang on that like button a bunch of times. Send this episode to somebody else who may need to want to see this. Because the thing about life is that it takes movement. We were talking about capitalism the other day. And, economic systems, let's say. As we're talking about that, we're talking about the need for any fiscal system, let's say, there's a need for money to exchange hands. That's how the systems work. That's how economy operates, right? So as we go through our daily lives, remember that when you buy a makeup, or you buy a burger, or you buy a French poodle, or whatever, you're exchanging goods coming to you with funds being paid, and so you're exchanging. So money is being spent. So the system is operating according to how it is supposed to operate. Standing still. So having an idea on something is important. And we've talked about that. A business plan, for example. Let me put on the show right here, folks. Right here. I want to start seeing some comments coming on. Some comments, some questions. Let's get this show rolling, because I'm gonna. Chris apparently had as a matter of fact, I'll reply to him after the show. But I got an email about 30 minutes ago that Chris had something come up and isn't going to make it today. So he asked for another opportunity at a future date. I'm going to tell him no. This is, 2 strikes and you're out. This isn't 3 strikes here. You folks came here to listen to somebody who, right here, one of my favorites on this show that comes in fairly regular. Haven't seen you in a while. Leah. Chris, what was the scariest decision you had to make before things worked out? See, I can't answer questions like that, but I can say if I change that to Rodd, because Chris isn't here, he's not going to come, and I'm not going to allow him on the show. That's unacceptable. One time I get it, but if you're going to do a second show, you folks are here to see an expert on a subject. Fortunately, this subject I can speak on pretty well. So I look forward to it. So I'm going to answer this question from as though you were asking it from Rodd. How do you push yourself to execute when motivation? Oh, there's some good questions coming on. Chris, you messed up, dude. And you're not going to be allowed on this show. I can tell you that. I'm not gonna let you hijack two separate groups of people for whatever your issues are, Chris. You no longer are allowed on this show. So, what was the scariest decision you had to make before things worked out? Well, that's happened quite a bit, honestly, throughout my life. I've had to make tough decisions, and some of them worked out, and some of them didn't. As we know, hold on. That's making it all the way out there. I like that. I can see the things here. But for an example, let me use this as an example. Let's see. Well, so far things haven't worked out yet. So I'm going to give you two examples. One that hasn't had enough time to work out yet, meaning this show. This was a scary decision. I mean, I uprooted myself from Chicago and moved here to Mangum, Oklahoma. That was a scary decision, but it was a good decision for a couple of reasons. And one of them, which I haven't really talked a lot about, is that I was able to put myself here for the reasons that I did it. But on top of that, I was also able, it's a little higher than this side is, isn't it? I don't like that. I should have shaved that right just that much off. But also as it turns out, what I was spending per month up in Chicagoland, I don't have to spend those excessive amounts of money per month just to operate day in and day out life. So, and in that aspect, it's already worked out well. So I made that decision. Actually, producer Barbie and I together worked on this for me relocating to here. And that was a really scary decision to come up with. 333 people. How funny. There's 300. Thank you all for being here. Please subscribe to the show. I see you're making a lot of comments here. Appreciate that. But please subscribe to the show and like the episode. Those things right there do more than you can ever imagine to allow conversations like this to exist. And so from that aspect as well, this has already been successful. So far, we have another new sponsor. And where's your guest? I know. We're going to put that on. Where's your guest? He didn't show up. I got an email. Let's see. I got an email at Chris Troka at 12:10. I was actually in the middle of a meeting with one of the local politicians about what we're doing for the Mangum 2030 project. And this came across at 12:10. Said, "Hey, Rodd, I'm sorry. I had unexpected news today and will need to reschedule. Do you have future alternative appointments?" Yeah, I do, but not for you, Chris. No, not at all. Because you had an unexpected thing happen again. In the last show, he did the same thing right before the show. And then he declined Deeper Drive, StreamYard link, show details. And then he declined at 12. What time was this one? At 12:27, he declined and said, Chris Troka and Rodd Duff, host of Insights and Straight Talk, Thursday, March 5th, 1 to 2 p.m., which, we never only go an hour. And so I'm going to email him back and say, Chris, thanks for wanting to reschedule again, but not this time. Thank you for your time. Good luck on whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. But my folks, our community also has other things in life to do. And you showed up here because you wanted some input. The James Show right here. This is actually another podcast. Where is your guest? My guest is a no-show. No fun. So let's go back here where Leah was asking Chris what the scariest decision. So I was talking about the decision about doing this show was scary, and relocating, and all those things that we did. See my piano here? Ooh, right there. Ooh. The flag there. It's kind of cool. But when I had my machinery business, I was just talking to a customer, called me not 5 minutes before the show started. He was asking me about some process stuff, material handling, cooling stuff, cooling a mold. He's getting some mold sweat. So I'm still kind of, helping people out. But like I told him, I said, I do a show now. I kind of retired, but I do this show 6 days a week. So I wouldn't really consider it retiring. But I still love the process. I still love processing and all the things that go with that. So when I was building that machinery business, at a point in time, I was making about $500,000 a year just selling for other factories. And so I decided I wanted to build that business up, build it more, not just be a rep, be a installation company. And then eventually I started making equipment. Not me, but the folks that I hired started making equipment for that complemented the other equipment that I sold for other people. And then we would install it. Then I started doing preventative maintenance contracts and so forth. And all of that worked out. But here's the thing, when you say worked out, it all worked out, but then I didn't really enjoy what I was doing. So I had to make a life change. So I made another one to wind that company down and wind this show up. And we've got 25,000 subscribers right now across our social media. So I think it's working out pretty well. How do you personally push yourself to execute when motivation disappears? Yeah, that's a tough one because so many people work their lives and work on their lives strictly based on motivation. And what I found is that it's interesting to have a point in your time where you start working for a purpose instead of just driving towards a number. Yeah, do you get what I'm saying there? So I use this example. Producer Barbie told me a long time ago, and I've said this a lot lately, but she told me that I built she reminded me or made me realize in this statement when she said, you know, Rodd, you know, dear, you created and built up the machinery business out of ego, right? And she was right. It was ego. I wanted to be. I set myself up as working towards being something that I imagined that I should be. Then she said, but you know what, Rodd? You're doing this show. You're building this business out of love. And I'm getting to your question, Allie, here. There's a difference. You know, I went, when I was in college, however long ago, 40 years-ish ago or so, I went for two things. I majored in business and I majored in theater. And I very much really enjoy. I didn't have a lot of confidence then, so I made decisions based on what I felt I should be doing instead of what I wanted to do. Now I'm finally back. You know, I met a young lady, my wife, the mother of my children. I met her and decided I needed to do what the world decided I should do, which was go into business. I worked for other companies and eventually created a business that was very successful. Like I said, I was making like $500,000 a year. Decided to take that and roll it over and bought another company for a couple $1 million and you know, moved on from there. What I'm now doing is what is my mission in life. And that's a whole different motivation than just having motivation to reach a number or reach a picture of life that you believe is safe and you can support your family with. And who knows, maybe that's the right way I went. I've thought a lot about this, you know. Maybe I did the right thing because maybe I was too young and immature to have really been able to come back to the world of theater, which this is the world of theater, let's call it. It's a podcast, but it's in the entertainment industry. So would I have I mean, who knows where this is going to end up, but I mean, the indicators are very exciting. You know, 25,000 subscribers and followers in a year and a half across social media. That, I mean, look at me. Am I a social media expert? You know, I'm too old to be a social media expert, but I did learn. I didn't start over. I did learn a lot of things in building the other businesses, so that helps with this, I assume. But what pushes me now? Actually, pushing me is not the right word. I'm being pulled, literally being pulled, because I was talking to somebody about this recently, in that I really believe that I'm on a journey now that I should have been on, maybe shouldn't have been on, and that's what I contemplate. Would I have been mature enough to have done throughout that time what I'm currently doing and going towards in this mission that we have, in this journey of life that I'm currently on? Meaning I am doing something now that if I would have started out of college instead of out of 60s, into my 60s, would the end result be the same? I don't know. It's an interesting question though. But the whole point being that now I'm on this journey and I'm not being pushed. How do you personally push yourself? I don't need to push myself. I wake up every day intrigued at the life that I currently live, and intrigued that as I look back, I talk about that. I really firmly believe that God's been trying to get me on this journey for a long, long time, to the point of throwing stones at me and boulders in front of me, and to the point where I should have died a couple of times, and he kept me alive just to say, dude, you haven't started what your mission is. And that's what pushes me every day is that thought about I'm literally on the mission that I was put on this earth to do. So it's Mangum storms the next few hours. Yeah, so I'm going to make this a short show because there's some big storms coming in, and as I was alluding to, this hasn't been successful yet because I still pay for it. In other words, we've gotten new sponsors and things are headed, the trajectory is headed very well in the right direction, but we haven't built up the substantial base to be able to even qualify for revenue generation yet. But that's very close now. So I'm excited about that. But the fact that I'm on this mission now, I am taking Social Security. All my savings is gone. So now I'm budgeting my Social Security. So I've worked all my life and retired now. I worked all my life. Then upon retiring, started this show, and in hopes to do a number of things with revenue that eventually will come from doing this show. But the motivation itself comes from meetings like what I had this morning or today, where we talked about the Mangum 2030, which is a rural revitalization pilot program. Just like the Regeneration School Project is a pilot program. Both of them independently, though connected in ways. In other words, the 5 pillars that is the Mangum 2030 project, which involve digital new jobs coming into digital in this digital currency, bringing new employment opportunities into Mangum, along with physical fitness incentives from Mangum going out. All these things are these programs that we're developing are programs that come into that are started in Mangum, used as a pilot to proof of success, and then spreading outward. How do you personally push yourself to execute when motivation disappears? Doing what you do only on motivation that's internally developed or created is a difficult. It's doable. That's how I built my machinery business, just on the motivation to be successful, to hit those numbers, and that's a very stressful and exhausting and exhilarating in the fact that you're pushing yourself to achieve, but none of those things are anything compared to something that becomes your journey. I connect that to the conversation I had yesterday about centurions, people who live 100 years or more of life. Usually those people live that long because they have a mission, because they're driven, not from internal motivation, but they have a purpose that's bigger than themselves. That's the best way to stay motivated. How do you balance creativity and discipline in daily work? A year ago, 2 years ago, I would have answered this totally differently. The Adventure Show. I love it when shows come on. That's so cool. Yeah, you know what, folks? If this is probably going to be a pretty short show, so if you're going to ask any more questions, please bring them on earlier versus later. Otherwise, I'm going to just go ahead and bail because kind of feeling like I want to spend some time with my dogs today in the afternoon and get there before these storms start going crazy, which they will be crazy. Trust me, I'm in Oklahoma. So creativity and discipline in daily work. Like I said, I would have answered this differently 2 years ago and any time before 2 years ago. But today I'm answering this differently because I think so you have creativity and you have discipline. You know what I've discovered is that discipline is irrelevant between creativity and other types of work. So I look at creativity as anything where somebody steps out of the box and looks at the world differently or a project differently, right? Whatever you want to balance that together on. Discipline meaning that you're going to do A, B, C, and D, and you're disciplined enough to finish A, then B, then C, then D. And being creative, you might think you might want to go from A to D to B to C to B to D to, oh yeah, I gotta still work on A. That's how I would have thought about that 2 years and more ago. That's how I would have thought of that. But today, I look at creativity as a multiple thing. Creativity being, I used to only think of creativity as, hey, I can write, I can draw a picture, I can sing, I can create a song, I can do creative things. But now I look at creativity as being something that someone does that's outside of the box that you would normally think. I drink the last of my soda here. Been going to the gym. It's kind of building up pretty good, huh? Look at those lats going on there. It's pretty tight, baby. Well, looks like we're gonna lay out here at about 350 people. Appreciate you folks being here. Sorry that my guest stood us up. But let's see, what was the motivation? Ooh, wow. That's going to be a hard one for me. So now that I look at the world differently, I'm much more expanded and honestly, it's not because I'm 60 something years old now. In other words, old and experienced it more, although that has something to do with it. But, I talk about producer Barbie a lot on this show. for obvious reasons. But the other reasons, which you guys have heard a lot about, are because, you know, she's the reason I'm alive still. That's just one thing. You know, she's been and still is still today is, even though she's in California, the little beach bunny shit. She's a very influential person. There's another woman here, young lady, a young lady. She's in her 50s. She looks like she's in her 20s. I termed it this way a couple of days ago. If Barbie was if there was a rural farm town Barbie, she would be Barbie. So there's people out there in this world that do amazing things and are amazing assets to the human species. And you know, I went from one place in my life where producer Barbie literally is the reason I'm here, not just that I'm alive, but that I'm doing this. And believe me, folks, anytime that I get to a point where it's like, and it happens all the time, where it's like, I just need some reassurance, you know? I mean, I consider myself a go-getter, you know, somebody who goes after things. But even with that, I mean, it's not easy. You know, here, let me go back to this question. There's this one, and then there's this one, and then there's this one. So keep this one right here in mind with what I'm saying now. It's hard. I told you, now that I'm on this journey, the ability to push myself so much easier because I'm being pulled. But on the B part of the answer, A and B part of the answer to that question, how do you balance creativity with discipline in daily work? You've got to have somebody that you can bounce stuff off of. Producer Barbie, you know, we communicate almost every single day, not every day, but basically every single day, and multiple times. And some of those are just, I just need to hear your voice, or I need to hear you, Barbie. We need that kind of person in our lives. I know I do, and I know I don't necessarily speak for everyone in the world, but I can guarantee you that if you don't have a soulmate or somebody that is honest about you being all of you, at least, and that's at least what Barbie is for me. It's much more difficult to be disciplined in achieving what you're doing. I talk about life's a journey, and people like Barbie are those folks. And this show I consider is like those people in our lives who put lights, who show light on the different parts of our journey, so we don't fall off. Or we can at least get back on if we do, and we can see the path as which way we're going. And because life's not a straight line, and nor should it be. But if you have people in your lives that put those lights, that show the way, that show that even in times that are tough, and even this is at moments, it's just like it's not moving. Are things happening? Are we going anywhere with this? When that happens, when you have somebody like that in your life that allows that creates that to happen for you, that creates a difference in how effectively and how happy your journey is. So there's a lot of stuff that comes into questions like this that are important to acknowledge. And so, an easy answer is creativity doesn't negate discipline, right? Discipline is there whether you're doing something creative, which is as simple as something just thinking out of the box to create a budget issue or solve a budget issue or solve a project issue or whatever. That's the creative side of things in let's call it the metal industries, the hardcore industries. And then there's the creative industries. Either way, to answer your question, Adventure Show, creativity does not compete against discipline. Discipline is there no matter which direction you're headed down, whether it's a creative direction that you're whether it's a creative answer or a creative approach to an issue or not, discipline is irrelevant to that issue. However, being creative in doing something, to me, gives you more energy towards the discipline. That's what I got to say about that. James Show. And that's the same person who asked where my guest is. And I think somebody left right after they found the guest wasn't on. So maybe I'm answering this question to somebody who's not ever going to hear it, unless they come back and watch the show. Because somebody asked me earlier, hey, you go out live, but where's the recording? And where we go live, all those places I described earlier, the show exists there for eternity, basically, right? But I always tell people to go to YouTube because every show that we've ever done is cataloged and secured on our YouTube channel at Rodd Duff 1939. Where was there a specific moment that forced you to take full responsibility? Wow. I don't want to answer this question. I don't want to answer it because I still have responsibilities from my past that I'm cleaning up. And so, yeah, okay. So I haven't taken all full responsibility, the actual actions yet, to all the responsibility that I need to make up for. And so, but the moment came a year and a half, 2 years ago. I say September, October, November, December, January, February. A year and 5 months ago. So we started this show a year and 5 months ago. About 6 months before that, I had a breakdown. I had a mental breakdown. It was in Florida. It was at a show. It was producer Barbie and I I rented a suite that had multiple rooms. So we were there. And oh my God. Hi, producer Barbie. Oh, I'm talking about you right now. I didn't know you were on the show. Your strength, determination, vision, and desire is what drives this show and shaping the future of everyone you touch. See what I mean? Pat yourself on your back for me and breathe. Thank you. Is that sunglasses and a palm tree? Are you rubbing California in my face right now, young lady? Thank you for that, by the way. So I don't know what to say from here. I was just going to wrap up, but now that's producer Barbie, folks. That's the one I talk about all the time, right there. Hi there. All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap up unless anybody comes on with a question here real quick. I'm gonna do the closing monologue and I'm gonna go hang out with my dogs on the porch and watch the storms go by. I'm gonna take a little time for myself today. Looks like you have a new account, Barbie. That looks well, definitely your picture is different. Very cute as always. BSR 4538. You made my day, girl. Appreciate it. Love you. Love you all. And let me do this. I'm going to go here. Oh, you know what? I didn't. Hey, Barbie, by the way, I don't know if you've seen this, but I have started doing banners. Check that out. You're watching live. Your voice matters. Join the movement. YouTube at Rodd Duff 1939. Somebody just made a text. Insights, Straight Talk, Substack.com. And then there's this one. Share this link live now. One link, live energy, permanent replay. Bring your ecosystem to the conversation. And then there's this one. Thinking audience, this is your movement. Ask the hard questions. Add context. Disagree respectfully. Participation is power. Let's see what the other comment is here. Okay. Yes, that is the beach and a beach umbrella. You are so cruel. Let's go back to it. This is what she's talking about right here. See that? That's the beach and the beach umbrella. Oh, I thought it was sunglasses. Wow, you're tricky, girl. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. Let me go back to here. I want to go here. I want to go to here. I want to go this down to here. And I am going to do my outtake. All right, so right there, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to tell you folks that as we wrap this deeper drive, I want to reconnect this conversation to why we structured it the way we did, which didn't work out at all. So all of this disregard, but I'm going to still give you the close. The January 29th episode was a preview. This was a wrap up. In other words, that episode was supposed to be the table setting, the moment to hear the outline. This conversation was supposed to be, as we are airing March 5th at 1 p.m. we started. We're now at about, what time is it? It's almost 2, is what happens after curiosity is sparked. Because execution doesn't live in previews. It lives in decisions. What we heard today wasn't about hacks or shortcuts. Actually, it was a lot about producer Barbie. It was actually about what shows up after the initial excitement fades. And as producer Barbie put, after it fades, what comes? You got responsibility. And of course, you always have risk. And you need to have that discipline. And for me, I'm going to add to that. As I was saying, to have somebody who believes in you, supporting that discipline and that identity. Most people don't stall because they lack information. They stall because the next step requires them to own something uncomfortable. That's why the partners behind the show matter. The Mangum City Library, stands for informed communities, because clarity is impossible without access to truth and context. Same with the Leaf Lab. They stand for applied learning, because ideas that never turn into action don't change outcomes. Voices at the Table and the Regeneration School Project, they stand for teaching people how to think, how to communicate, and lead before life forces the lessons the hard way. This platform exists because insight alone is not enough. Conversation alone is not enough. Execution supported by community is where momentum actually begins. If today's conversation added value, here's how you can help us. Help us keep building this space. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, as I said, at Rodd Duff 1939. Subscribe to Substack for deeper writing and extended conversations. Share this episode with someone who watched the preview and needs that deeper drive. And I'll leave you with this question. What did this conversation surface that you can no longer ignore? Why? Because previews inspire, but decisions change trajectories. Thank you for being part of Insights and Straight Talk. We'll see you on the next conversation. Why? Because I am out of here.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. Make the decision. Make it.